with Barry, and Catherine Sorrells and I are here to welcome you, and I want to say a few words, and then Catherine will speak. I think you'll all agree that it's rare to find a place and a time where you love what you do, you enjoy the people you work with, and you meet somebody that you connect with and you want to hang out with all the time. And that's how it was with Christie and me. I met her in 1979 in Darby Annex. Darby Annex was that beautiful building that the speech department, not communication studies, the speech department had taken over. Our files actually were in bathtubs. And we had a great time there. But Christie, I had made the decision at that time, not a great decision, to move into administration. And so I was moving out of my office, and Christie was moving in, because she had just been hired as an assistant professor. And I met her as she packing it, loading up her books and so forth, and she was so beautiful and so bright and bright-eyed and inquisitive, and we just hit it off, and it continued throughout our lives. When I asked my granddaughter what I should say about Christie, how do I talk about Christie, she said, tell stories. And I said, that's good. Christie loves stories. And I hope you will all look at the story storage box, that beautiful art creation that Julia Williams created. It's in there with that beautiful quilt, which also tells stories. Now, I could regale you with stories about administration, faculty fights, subversive feminists, all of which we engaged in. But I think I would rather talk a little bit about something that Christie and I shared for many years, and that is Sea Ranch. A number of years ago, my husband and I bought a house in Sea Ranch, which is on the Pacific Ocean, 110 miles north of San Francisco. And it was in bad shape, and it needed a lot of work, and so we had to drive up frequently. And I asked Christie if she would be willing to drive up with me one day and spend a little time up there. And she was the first of my friends to drive up with me. Now, as many of you know, Christie was not an early morning person. And I am. So when I told her I'd pick her up at 5:30 a.m., she looked at me and said, well, okay. So in the morning, as I pulled up to her house on Friar Street, she staggered out, coffee in hand, and I said, good morning. I won't be cheerful. She said, good. And that was the last word I heard from her for 2 hours. Until we reached Buttonwillow for our Starbucks. So we made many trips to Sea Ranch. She helped us move in and move out 30 years later. During the 80s and 90s, a group of 5 women from CSUN would drive up or fly up for a week the minute the semester was over. Armed with books and wine, we spent many days of bliss on getting rid of all the travails of the semester. Christie probably loved Sea Ranch as much as I did and relished her time there. I think probably because she and I both hate the heat, and it was very cool. And in the mornings, I would find her on the deck in the fog and cold, drinking her coffee and reading. In the evening, I would say good night, and she was out there looking at the stars, and she would always say, I will secure the perimeter. There wasn't a whole lot to secure. Every night, that was our little ritual. When Jim, Christie, and I went up with our friends Pat and Doug, we became a team. Each had his or her role. I planned the menus and cooked. Jim fixed things at Richard's direction. Richard would say, oh, this screen needs it, or this, and Jim was always there. Pat and Doug grocery shopped at Surf Super in Gualala. Jim and Doug were the kitchen boys and cleaned up. And Christie set up the music and the fire each evening. And we all sat, talked in front of the fire. She was also our technical advisor on all things. She knew more about computers, and she was constantly fixing things for Dick and me up there on our computers. And one of my favorite photos is one of her cleaning my laptop screen with a cloth because she couldn't stand it. And let's not forget the music mixes. Her grasp and understanding of musical genres was astounding. For many occasions, she put together music for all of us that reflected a mood, an event, or a time. She spent hours creating wonderful memories for all of us. Here are some titles that I still play. The Adversity Tape for Richard. Actually, she made several adversity tapes. The Newest Child for Daisy Lemus. For Cynthia Rawich, A Looking Back and Moving On for her retirement. Christmas mixes for all of us for many years. Songs for Aunt Mary, Mother, Grandmother, Gigi, and all of us. Music for Sea Ranch days and nights and years. And this one was the last night our little group was together, and we played this 90-minute mix. We didn't say a word. We just listened and watched the fire. And final tape, Alive Anew. Thank you. Now we had a guest book at Sea Ranch, and Christie made a number of entries. And this is where I knew I was going to lose it. So today somebody came up with some ideas. She had we found out with song lyrics, which are so perfect, and they speak to us today. But I couldn't read them without losing it. So here's what I'm doing. I'm going rogue here. I'm going to tell you how I practiced for this. I asked my daughter, how am I going to get through this poem? It's only 4 lines. She said, just practice, practice, practice. So I kept practicing, practicing. So I was in the dental office the other day, getting my teeth cleaned, and my dental hygienist, who's a talker. Why are they all talkers? I didn't mean this to be so funny. Anyway,
That was a good compliment.
So she said, what are you doing this weekend? And I said, well, I'm going to this memorial celebration, and I can't do this. She said, well, what is it? And I said, it once makes me cry. Would you mind hearing it? She said, no, go ahead. So I'm in the dental chair, and I said it. She and I were both crying. Oh. Then, this morning, I got my hair cut. And the hairdresser said, what are you doing? I told her. She actually had heard through the years with Christie, I'd talk about it. And she said, well, let me hear it. I said, okay. So then my hairdresser and I were crying. So, what I'm doing, I'm going to read it. I'm going to try. But what I've done is I ran off the copies in her handwriting from the guest book where I found this. And my friend Pat has copies if you want it, because if you can't hear me, you can read it. But it's so perfect. So here it goes. But I still belong to everyone. And if my sleep allows, then I'll be running wild tonight. Just me and my old pals.
Wow.
We are going off script. You were supposed to stay up here with me.
Someday.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's my great pleasure to join Jim, of course, and Elizabeth, in really thanking everyone for coming today. I say it's a pleasure just because I want to celebrate Christie. It's a pleasure to celebrate her. It's been a couple months of grieving challenge for many of us, for all of us. I know the people who came from out of town were saying to me it just didn't quite feel real. You know, it feels when you're not here. And my response was, well, it feels almost too real, having been here. So we're really, really grateful for everyone here to hold and extend our love for Christie, to honor and celebrate her amazing spirit and gifts, and to remember to put back together in our hearts and in our minds, and of course it's Christie, so in our bodies. We want to remember Christie's fierce and passionate love for life, her deep promise to the creative process, to a life of the mind. We're here to remember and celebrate the alchemy that was Christie. Christie was my colleague, my mentor, my dear friend, a spiritual sister and companion. In all these roles, she provided space. She created space for me and with me to be, to explore, to struggle, to be still, to be angry, sad, to learn, and to grow. Christie opened pathways, literally and figuratively. A book shared, an idea extended, a pun intended. Her witty rejoinders were always uplifting and often pierced to the very heart of a matter. Christie opened pathways, cleared away the brambles, or pointed them out so we could clear them together. She turned on the lights and dimmed them when necessary. She understood pain and struggle. She grappled with and in the darkness. She shared her own and mine, offering shelter and relief. Christie opened pathways for me and for so many by walking with us, sometimes guiding us, often walking beside us, and always being there behind us, supporting us. After the lung transplant, maybe less than a month after the operation, I visited Christie at Jim and Christie's home. I was standing in the living room when she came striding out of the bedroom. Her arms were swinging. She had that eagerness in her step, that energy in her whole body. Her eyes were bright with joy, with this kind of intention that you just can't even describe. Christie was back. It was a miracle. She was back, an embodied cadence of light. Yet the struggle was not over. During this last year, as she fought for her life, Christie and I shared many hours together, usually on Sundays. Beyond checking in, sharing stories, and catching up, we also did Reiki sessions. Christie and I both studied and practiced Reiki, a spiritual healing practice that moves self and others towards wholeness. Reiki is a Japanese word that means universal energy or universal light. After one of our Reiki sessions, Christie talked about how much she had lost. Her mobility, her appetite, her focus. Yet her deepest sense of loss was for the creative process. While I wasn't able to articulate it then, I'd like to tell her now. Christie, you never lost your connection to the divine creative energy, the universal spirit, to light. You simply became the creative process. Your joy, bright eyes, your suffering, the bounce in your steps, the fragility of stepping, your words, vulnerabilities, and wisdom transform now into universal light. Your final performance, the alchemy that is Christie, a cadence of light. So we have a really, really amazing group of people here gathered. Some who've been fighting their way through traffic on the 405, others who came from long distances. We're really, really pleased to have all the folks here, all of you here to hold and celebrate with us. And then we have an exceptional group of people to share their thoughts, their words, and their creative work. These are friends, co-learners, and family. That's what really ties us all together. We have former students who are now professors, mentees who are now and always friends, college and creative buddies who are forever friends. Unfortunately, one of our performers, presenters, Julia Johnson, is not able to be here. She wanted to, but she's struggling herself with illness. But other than that, what we're going to do, instead of introducing each person, we'll just let you all follow the program. So we'll allow the program to guide you through the presenters and their work. So thank you all for being here, to hold the space and to honor Christie. And bring up Jim.
It's the strangest thing. It's like being at a party where I know everybody. And that's a really unusual party. I want to welcome and thank everyone for coming to mark Christie's passing. Especially Catherine, who really did all the heavy lifting on this event. Just unbelievable. And Elizabeth and Pat Oliver, who did the flowers and helped with the event. And Yoli Avila, who is department secretary, who ran all interference across campus to help make these things happen. And Sheena Rahotra, who did the music, which I couldn't quite hear all the music when I was in the room because of the conversation, but the music before and after are kind of cuts of some of Christie's mixes, which are particularly apt for moving on. So it's really worth listening to if you get the chance. And then the folks at the University Club, Stephanie and Brandia, and Michael, the videographer. There's a lot of family and friends back on the East Coast and in the Midwest, and so they'll get to participate. Also to my family and friends who have been taking care of me. They've been checking up on me, feeding me, distracting me, which has been great. The past 2 months have been just really, really tough, as anybody would guess. I mean, every day there's just waves of sadness, and there's a million triggers. Music, or coming home to an empty house. Christie and I were very independent. We went our own ways and took trips alone, but we always kind of came back, and the other was always there. And I really feel that absence. And other times during the day where something happens, and this part of me in my brain still says, "Oh, I gotta remember to tell Christie this. She's gonna like this." And so it's been very, very sad. But I also have tremendous gratitude. She never had any pain in this awful year where she was so sick and struggled to breathe. She never had any pain, and that was just such a gift. And it enabled her, even in her sickness, for us to talk. And even in this terrible year, it was so intimate. We had so much time together. We talked so much. We laughed. Right, Sylvia? And I'm really, really grateful for our 43 years together, because a lot of people don't get anything close to that. Right. And I know how special that was. We met in 1973. We were both new graduate students at USC. We're both new TAs. And we've probably been at a TA meeting, and we've probably been in a first class together, but we hadn't really met. And I had just gotten notice that my student loan had come through. And I went out and bought a stereo. And I was so excited because my old stereo had broken on the trip cross country, and I was so excited, but I didn't really know anybody to kind of share that excitement with. I was bursting, and I was standing in an elevator in Taws Hall at USC, and Christie walked in, and I just went, "I just bought a stereo." And just think of all of the things she could have said. But what she said was, "What kind of music do you like?" And we connected from that moment. And then the rest of our time at USC was sharing the music we both loved, turning each other on to music, and then kind of forging through the challenges of grad school. And that's where we did it. We got married in Maryland in 1977, and on Thanksgiving, and this Thanksgiving would have been 40 years. And I'm just really grateful for that. We're both very independent, and we tried, consciously, intentionally, to try to balance autonomy and interdependence, and to make that work. And everybody knows how hard it is to make that work, but we really tried on it. And in this last year, where Christie became more and more dependent, it was really hard for her, because she always took care of herself, and did things, and now I had to do them. And I didn't mind, but it was just really a big change for us. We spent more time together during the days in this last year in the hospital than we had ever spent together. Even when we were teaching, we were going our separate ways. And but even though that was kind of difficult for her to process and was a real change in our relationship, she just kind of handled it with such grace. She was such a realist. And she would kind of like deal with the situation and figure out, okay, what needed to be done next. And that's the way she handled her sickness. And so, as all of you know, Christie emanated this beautiful, beautiful energy that you'll never forget. She was engaged, empathic, curious, generous. And you all know her in different roles. But to me, she was every one of these. She was a partner, she was a friend, she was a colleague, she was a teacher, she was a mentor, and she was an artist. And as an adapter, as a director, as an actor, as a writer, as a creator of these beautifully crafted music mixes, which even though they were a collection of other people's music, they were like completely specific and targeted to an occasion or to a person or to an event. So having her in my life was an immeasurable gift, and I know that many of you share that feeling. So today, as hard as this is, and it's pretty fucking hard, I choose to focus on the gratitude. And already in my experience in these past couple of months, the grief kind of comes and goes, but the gratitude is persistent. And so today, I hope we just kind of pause to appreciate that gift of Christie.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I have been tasked with the sacred opening for this event. But let us be clear, every word spoken so far, and all the words yet to come, in honor and in gratitude for Christie's memory, her presence, is deeply sacred. Let us be still. Divine Mother, Father, Spirit, Source, who we call by so many names, thank you. Thank you for this event to celebrate Christie Logan. Thank you for the people who have taken such time and made such great effort with all the details of making this great event happen. And thank you for Christie Logan. While we recognize that in spirit we are all one still, beloved, help us to celebrate her uniqueness in demonstrating your godness, your goodness in her every humanness. Bless her in her transition to her next great adventure, whatever it is. And bless us, husband, sister, brother, nephew, niece, grandnephews, nieces, cousins, colleagues, and friends. Bless our tears even as we celebrate Christie. And bless our laughter and rejoicing even as we mourn the physical loss of her sparkling eyes, deep, warm, throaty laugh, and dancing hands, her devotion, her joy, her passion for justice, all too soon. Giver of life, love, and all blessings, let our hearts and minds come together today in the name of your beloved daughter, Christie. Amen. The name of this poem is called Long Afternoon at the Edge of Little Sister Pond by Mary Oliver. There is an interesting use of the word pretend in the poem. And so I thought I'd look it up, and I discovered that the original meaning of the word pretend is to stretch. As for life, I'm humbled. I'm without words to say how it has been hard as flint and soft as a spring pond, both at once and over and over. And long pale afternoons besides, and so many mysteries, beautiful as eggs in a nest, still warm and watched over by something I have never seen. A tree angel, perhaps? Or a ghost of holiness? Every day I walk out into the world to be dazzled, then to be reflective. It suffices. It is all comfort, along with human love, dog love, water love, little serpent love, sunburst love, and the love of the smallest of birds flying among the scarlet flowers. There is hardly any time to think of stopping and lying down at last to the great afterlife, to the tenderness yet come, when time will brim over the singular pond and become forever, and we will pretend to melt away into leaves. As for death, I can't wait to be the hummingbird. Can you?
It's such an honor to be here today with all the friends and family of Christie and Jim, and just to stand here and see you all. I'm calling this A Life in Poetry. Christie and I first bonded as undergraduates over literature. Both English and theater majors, we traveled in 1970 to a performance festival in Indiana to perform poetry. Then Christie thought of herself as a performer and director, but everything she did fed the growing part of her that was a writer. We exchanged emails about her writing during the last years of her life. I'm going to quote from them here as well as from her poems, because I feel we need her voice today, her clear-eyed insight, the self she called in one poem a defiant sojourner finding her way. In one exchange, she said, "I've been pondering my adaptation work in my career, just the choice of staging and enacting novels, where the end is known, but my focus was so much on how the characters get there, how their dynamics drive the progression, and especially the revelations that come from highlighting what's beneath the surface. The delight I've always felt in the aha moments, especially when I see the audience respond that way. The multiplicity of yearnings in Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant, the quiet cacophony of grief in As I Lay Dying. The process was an opening of spaces, Virginia Woolf's still space that lies at the heart of things. So in some ways, I've been doing this kind of work for decades. Now it's focused on my own history." Christie really stepped into her writing life fully with a brave performance in 2006 in San Antonio, which was later published, of a series of poems about her mother and her childhood. Speaking of her own pain and disruption, and amid such empathy for her mother, she ended the series with, "So a mother is reborn, a daughter awakened, a life is revived, a writer renewed." Christie always had such courage. She was such a learner, able to use what she'd endured toward greater compassion and understanding. Even in her frequent humor, her love of language emerged. One of my favorite stories about Christie is when she and Linda and I shared a house in Albuquerque during a production she directed of one of my plays. One night, actually complaining about the dry, high desert air, we heard her say, "I need regal defense." She said it more than once, and finally we asked, "What is regal defense?" A silence. And then she said, "I said wrinkle defense." Regal defense. We laughed for weeks, years, and decades about Regal Defense. But Regal Defense stuck and became a code phrase for us. She wrote me in 2016, warning me of overcommitting myself to projects. Time to put on some Regal Defense and just say, later. Always the natural world, the life of the body, transformed her writing. Her poem, Trails of Memory, written in 2006, tells of her past self moving along with her present one as she hikes in alpine country. I'll read the last half of the poem. And these were trails she had gone on over a period of years, which she notes earlier in the poem. Sure-footed past passes me on the trail. She likes to fly. Now I take my time, move slowly through the forest, the meadow, around the shore of Mountain Lake. I stop much sooner now. Sure-footed past winds back to find me, tell me, remind me what's ahead. That patch of broken rock shale that moves with any foot that touches it. Those roots coming through the trodden earth as crooked as my fingers now, gnarled as my toes. They arise like a conference of forest elders, speaking in tongues curling around each other, in and out of earth. Farther up the trail, the patch of shocking blue that leaps up through the pines, almost glacial turquoise against the white-gray, almost silver granite cliff wall. Sun blinds you on the water, as if to make sure you catch your breath. At the top of the rise, thank your lucky life that you are here. You've made it here. Sure-footed past reminds me to breathe in that smell, feel that alpine air, call up that blue, that gray-white. See and feel that higher lake even here. On this low path, I rise above. Christie, you rose above every challenge of your life. Your spirit fierce and sure. I so admire that about you, as well as your beauty, your sharing of yourself, your incomparable laughter, your ability to love. It's not a coincidence that one of your favorite responses to something you liked was lovely.
Yeah.
As we gather here today, we celebrate you. No one was and is more loved or beloved than you, our dearest Christie, the defiant sojourner finding her way. I will miss you and love you always.
So I'm going to do an excerpt from a performance that I did for Christie as part of a panel up at Western Speech Communication Association a few years back. It's called What Christie Sees. I might rename it tonight. This is fucking hard. In honor of Jim. All right. So it's the early 90s. And I'm a 21-year-old bro. I had those MC Hammer gym pants, remember? 2 gold hoops in my ear, Gold's Gym tank top, and a Superman pendant. Yes? I'm wearing a Superman pendant the first time I walk into Christie's Reader's Theater class. And God knows what she must have been thinking when she met me. But I remember most about that Reader's Theater class was sitting next to Christie and trying to understand what she saw. How does she understand what worked on stage? How to move people around? And I remember she called me one night during rehearsals and said she hurt her leg. and asked if I would be in charge. And I remember clearly thinking, why did she call me? What did Christie see? So it's years later, 2008, I have a performance troupe where I'm a professor now, and in response to the 2008 ballot, the anti-gay marriage ballot, my performance troupe decides to do a show. And I have a student sitting next to me serving as my assistant director, and I can see she's watching me, trying to figure out how I see what's going on stage. And she asked me how I do it, how I can come into a rehearsal with no notes and intuitively know what to do. And I don't have an answer for her then. But it comes to me years later when I read something from a performance critic. He explains that when an artist enters a room, they bring with them every teacher they've ever had. One by one, each teacher leaves the room. Then the artist leaves the room. Then the creative process begins. When I enter a room to direct, Gary Belfast is in the room with me, and Linda Park Fuller, and Julie Williams. One by one, they all leave till it's just Christie and I. She's always the last one to leave. She tells me, trust the process. Some of you have worked with Christie. Trust the process. She tells me performance can change the world. Christie leaves, I leave, and then the creative process begins. For many years, I had a chance to teach performing literature, and one of the books that I really loved to use was Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, about the Vietnam War. And O'Brien talks about the fictive truth, or the story truth. And he argues that the story truth is sometimes more real than the real truth. So here's a story truth about Christie. It's August 1969, and Christie is hitchhiking from the North Plains to Woodstock, New York. Her eyes are clear and blue like the sky on a cold fall morning in East Grand Forks, Minnesota. Her hair is wild like Janis Joplin. She has a backpack over her left shoulder, inside tattered copies of Spicebox of the Earth, On the Road, and of course our bodies ourselves. On the last morning of the Woodstock Festival, while Jimi Hendrix is playing the Star-Spangled Banner, Christie looks out and sees thousands of people united in peace and against the Vietnam War. She sees civil rights and feminism, earthquakes, and uprisings. She sees oral interpretation and performance studies. She sees a man she does not yet know, watches him fly down the trail on a mountain bike, and believes she may fall in love with him. She sees the faces of her students not yet born and knows what we will become. She sees black box theaters and literature coming to life on stage. Christie sees things she does not yet understand, but she knows in her body that they are true. Thank you.
Just a forward, Jim, on behalf of Carrie L. Kaczynski, Amy, and myself, there's a tree in the lobby. We encourage everybody to write a wish for her or a blessing. Some of us didn't get the opportunity for closure, and perhaps this is your last goodbye. And then you can take it home and plant her and all of us in your yard. August 1996. I take my first class with Christie, performance theory. I'm obsessed with the way her gnarled hands wind themselves around the chalk as she generates discussion questions on the board. I watch her body as she takes command of our space. Her mesmerizing blue eyes connect with mine, and I admire her grace, deciding on that first day that I will never cut my hair when I'm older.
August 1996. I take my first class with Christie. I'm captivated by the spotlight that seems to follow her on her stage. Through a rhetorical, lyrical assignment, she forces me out of my either-or thinking, and she encourages me to see beyond the literal. I use musical theater lyrics for the assignment, and immediately we bond over a mutual love of the stage. December 1998. With Christie's guidance, I graduate with my bachelor's degree, and I'm pretty clear that I'm on my way to a cubicle, Coca-Cola, when CL motivates me to consider graduate school and to become a TA. I'm shocked I actually applied. She is not. She officially becomes my mentor of record.
December 1998. I have no idea what I'm going to do with the communication studies degree. I don't have a single thing figured out, but I love this woman. She's the smartest and the coolest woman I know. She coaxes, she guides, she nudges. I'll follow her anywhere. I apply to graduate school. May 1999. The phone rings. It's CL. Congratulations, she says. You've been offered a teaching associate position in our department. I shriek, and then, wait, did Amy get one? Yes, she's my next call.
Fall 1999. We teach, she observes closely. We write, she grades. We perform, and she directs. We journal, and journal, and journal. We are graduate students, and Christie is there. She is always there.
December 1999. I'm developing my activism. I'm finding my political voice. I want to leave LA, move to Seattle, protest, do something. Nothing cool is happening here, I whine to her. She pushes back. It's because of that you need to stay. Don't go where the movement is, create it here. You're being called to lead and not to follow. I stay. We protest together. With her help, I take my research on activism to a conference in 2001.
I sort of made it to that conference. I stayed nearby in a hospital for several weeks. Christie is at my bedside. She gifts me a journal in the hospital. And she directs me to write every day and to find meaning beyond the pain.
2002 to 2005. I write a thesis on global demonstrations and performance. She edits it. I graduate. Later, I apply for a doctorate. She writes the letter. It's sure to get me in. She gives good letter. I don't get in. She wipes my tears. I go traveling for a year instead and send her a postcard from every country I visit.
2004 to 2008. Christie encourages me to apply for a job at a college with no communication program. She tells me, quote, we'll just create it. I'm hired full-time there, and Christie is my first phone call. My dad passes away, and Christie helps me write through the grief. I buy a children's community theater, and CL is at my opening night with her big, beautiful smile. I'm tenured, and Christie tells me, quote, in an email, this is more meaningful than you can ever imagine. I am so proud of you. I meet my guy who's moving away. Christie orders me not to sabotage. I listen. And in 2008, she was dancing at our wedding.
Winter 2008. Christie is admitted to the hospital in Reseda. She watches the inauguration of Barack Obama on a television set from her room while doctors work to heal her. I buy her a scarf the color of her eyes. I don't know this yet, but it is the first time of dozens that I will sit by her hospital bed. We walk laps around the floor, tell jokes, and exercise her lungs.
2009 to 2011, life is busy for all. Sabbaticals, musicals, laughter, tears, politics, novels, lots of novels. And Christie was there. She was always there.
2011, she retires. We are no longer student teacher, student mentor, and now we are no longer colleagues. We become dear friends. We become family. Weekly therapy dinners commence. The connection deepens over pot stickers and Chardonnay. She opens up to me as I always have to her.
Fall 2013, I start a doctorate program, and CL is again my mentor of record. The doctorate program wanted to make sure that I picked someone who actually knew me. I told them, yeah, I got that covered. Christie signs the form and mentors me through yet another academic program.
2015 is a long year. She's tethered to a cannula. She's tired. She always said she had her mother's lungs. Those lungs are beginning to fail her. She still smiles.
March 2016, the transplant, the miraculous recovery, pure joy.
Thinking we are in the clear, we celebrate her recovery with laughter and wine. It is July 2016.
August, Christie is admitted to Cedars in critical condition.
Update from Jim. Not sure what's wrong. Visitors are welcome.
Update from Jim, she's getting better. We are going home. Visitors are welcome.
Update from Jim. She's not getting better. We're going back to the hospital.
December, she's being released in time to spend time at holidays with her family. Family are coming. She's getting better.
Update from Jim. Back to the hospital. Visitors are welcome. Update from Jim. She's getting better. Coming home. Visitors are welcome.
January. We spent this last year watching over her, as she had always watched over us. The dynamic changes, and our relationships deepen.
July. Update from Jim. She's coming home one last time. I go to her. I hold her hand. I brush her hair. I rub oils into her feet. She knows I'm there. She laughs at shared memories. I put on one of her compilation CDs. She smiles at the tenderness. I leave. I call Amy. There isn't much time.
Monday. Randy and I are at Christie's bedside. I say goodbye. It's fucking hard. I thank her for pushing me into the life I currently lead. I thank her for being my guide through life. She will continue to be my light, my forever spotlight.
She's not as alert today, but I know that she hears me. I bend down and I take my hands and I square them on her mother's lungs. And I lean in and I whisper into her ears, "This isn't where I see you. I see you on a plain somewhere. Big, big sky. Mountains are behind you, Christie. Maybe the Badlands. You love the Badlands. And something, you're next to a car. And something's playing out of that car. Maybe it's Dylan, maybe it's Joni Mitchell or the Allman Brothers. But you are dancing. And you have so much air in these lungs that you can't help but whoop and shriek and throw your head in that gorgeous, lustrous silver hair to the sky. And you are breathing, and you are joyous, and you are free.
She is still with me, with all of us. When I teach, I use her words and her gestures and her activities. It's only 5 minutes out of our entire lives. I watch my hands wind around the pen and think, how would she frame this discussion? When my shows open, I feel her spirit, sitting, smiling from the front row. When we give good letter or mentor our own students, we think, we are there, Christie. And she's there. She's always there.
Recurring image for the last 2 months, and it's from the first day that I met Christie. Gordon and I had just driven across country in a rental truck in our little brown Toyota, and a series of circumstances here in the valley led us to Jim and Christie's house, and we had never, even though we had never met them, we just talked to them on the phone. And yet, when we pulled up to the house, Christie came down the walk with her arms wide open. And I walked into her arms, and I felt like I was home. And I'm pretty sure that I'm not alone in that. So, I'm going to read a poem I wrote. It's a poem in 3 parts. I wrote it a month ago. I wrote it about a month ago. And the title of the poem is A Map of This Grief. Grief has its own highway. We pump the tank full of fuel and haul ass down that road, as if it were going somewhere. As if grief had a destination marked on a map, lit up on your GPS like Christmas. Grief isn't just the baggage we carry, it's a yellow VW bug for some cornbread. It's that flash flood we magicked up, conjured into life and then escaped from. Narrow margin that day driving down life's 2-lane. We were flirting with death that day. It's still so young, too young. That road unseen, where it would lead us too soon. Grief is about the overlap, where the edges blur and your story becomes my story, becomes our story, until an amalgam of story happens. It crafts itself, something like a spider weaves its web. Though I hate to use that analogy, given how much you feared and hated spiders. Remember the tarantula? Was all I had to say. My purse, you'd gasp. Your bottle of scotch, I'd howl. Midnight drive over the mountain to Las Vegas, lightning flashes all around us like the end of the world. Grief is about the overlap, where the edges blur, where one word triggers a story. Raccoons. The raccoons at Montana de Oro. Images of a tent, you still healthy and strong. The 3 of us drinking and laughing and then awakened from sleep. Club the fuckers, she shouted. Chasing the masked critter with a flashlight in one hand and a chunk of firewood in the other. Club the fuckers! Shouted by our Viking goddess. Did I mention you were in your underwear? The phrase of byword for years. Like Beechwood, like Friar Street, like Maple Lake, like Minnesota, like home. Grief is about the overlap, an amalgam of story, yours, mine, all of ours, together. Learning to listen for spirit stories in the call of the loon, in the wind. If I could, I would draw a map of this grief. One of those huge, complicated fold-out things the wind pushes in your face as you navigate, and thank goodness you're not the one driving when it does that. Oh my gosh, it's got a life of its own thing before you snap it under control. There would be lakes on it. Lots of lakes from Minnesota to California, from California to New York State. Lakes and lakes and more lakes. And there would be an ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and there would be rivers, some of them running wild and rushing over their banks. There would be cabins and lake homes and tents on it, for you see it would have to be a map meant for orienteering, drawn with icons to bring you home. So there would be DQs on it, and lots of filling station restrooms. And there would be roadside diners with bad food and bad coffee and cheap small hotels. There would be thunderstorms and lightning flashes, curving detours through the mountains, your bag of M&Ms and my bottle of scotch, and after I got sober, at least a couple cases of Pellegrino for hydration, and yours of white wine. And there would be the mixtapes you made, and later the CDs playing loud. And we would mark homecoming by the first time we heard the voice of the loon, and after that there would be a free fall into the past, and then there would be stories, one story after another, our overlapping narratives stitching us together like the soul sisters we knew ourselves to be the moment we met. The moment you walked with arms wide open to embrace me on that sidewalk on Friar Street in Van Nuys, and in Northridge, Reseda, Woodland Hills, Cambria, Big Sur, Big Bear, Monterey Bay in San Francisco, Sea Ranch, Sacramento, Lake Tahoe, Albuquerque, a quick stop in Denver, a longer stay in Wyoming, and then North Dakota, until finally Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes and so many loons and so many mosquitoes and so many resonating memories you'd almost think we grew up together there. If I could, I would draw a map of this life with you, and now without you. One of those huge, complicated fold-out things the wind slaps in your face when you're driving solo, and you still manage to snap it under control and switch with the times to GPS. Listening for a singular voice you want to hear.
Before I present what I planned for today, I just want to say a few things. The tale of a comet is very long, and when someone like Christie passes through your life, you better pay attention, because she's going to change your life. And that's what she did for me. When I first came to CSUN in 1990 to apply to the program in the speech communication department, I was a broken person. I spent 10 years trying to be an actor. At that time, my career was faltering, my marriage was failing, and my mother was urging me to come back to the States, and so I was getting a little long in the tooth, so I decided to come back. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. I had 2 suitcases and my cat. I left everything behind and I showed up here. I'd never heard of performance studies. I had some vague idea about, I don't know, getting a master's degree and occasionally teaching public speaking while I was trying to develop an acting career here in Los Angeles. But somehow during the course of that time, I got turned on to the academic thing. And I certainly had no confidence that I was going to be an academic. I had none whatsoever. But the department, and most particularly Christie, was really instrumental in changing the way I made my life. I took a huge turn. So eventually I was very lucky, because after I did my plan at CSUN, and then I went off to become get a doctorate, and then now I was teaching in Louisiana, and then I was teaching in Ohio, and so forth. And over the course of the many years, I was able to come back and spend time with Christie on an occasion for a lunch here and there or whatever. And I was always grateful that she would make the time to see me. And I remember thinking every time I had lunch with her that there just wasn't enough time. But I should point out, and as the performance I'm going to give you in a minute, or the presentation I'm going to give you in a minute indicates, we struggled together, she and I. Or rather, I should say, I struggled, and Christie did what Christie does, and that is, she sat and waited for me to get it. As Mark intimated earlier, this piece I'm going to do for you was presented in Monterey at Western States Communication Association some years ago on the occasion of Christie's retirement. And I was very glad to be able to present it to her at that time. And I'm very glad to be able to present it to you now. It's called Weaving the Way with Christie Logan. I opened the folder, and there, in that inimitable Christie Logan purple handwriting, right next to the large B, B+, signifying my grade, were the words, "Keep this. You will want to read it in a few years." A B for the performance journal detailing the troubled group dynamics my group and I had suffered through in the Christie Logan SPC 503 Seminar on Performance Theory, spring 1992. I had labored on that journal. I had labored in that group. It was then that the immortal words of Julia Johnson rang in my brain. Some years before, at the beginning of our program, when we were embarking on another group performance in our first Christie Logan seminar, Julia had said, "I've always been screwed by groups." Julia spoke the truth. I had to agree. When I saw that B+, I said, "Yep, I've just been screwed screwed by a group. There is this filament that weaves beside, between, behind, knitting itself from student to student, teacher to student, student to teacher, teacher to teacher. Anais Nin writes, "We do not grow absolutely chronologically. We grow sometimes in one dimension and not in another, unevenly. We grow partially. We are relative. We are mature in one realm and childish in another. The past, present, and future mingle and pull us backward, forward, or fix us in the present. We are layers, cells, constellations." When we got the full typed page of typed comments for a different assignment, a group presentation on the aesthetic approach in performance theory, same class, same group, our eyes quickly scanned the final paragraph, skipping over the descriptive paragraphs to focus our eyes on the paragraph that mattered. Coverage of Langer was worthy of an A-. The coverage of Dufresne was not adequate. The group grade of 12.5, B, reflects this. I realize your group was beset with many obstacles: the denseness of the material, the time constraints of having to go first, and other problems individual group members faced. I will take this into account when determining final course grades for everyone, and those who are on the borderline I will give the benefit of the doubt. I guess no one else wanted that page of typed comments, so I ended up with it. I kept it. You know those moments? You know? Those moments when your students say that thing. You know, that thing that makes you want to just erupt in laughter or in tears. You know, some utterly inappropriate comment. You know? You know. Well, there is this filament, and it tugs right there at my mouth where it shapes words. And the words are like leaning out of my mouth, ready to leap off the ledge of my lips with abandon, but this filament tugs them back. And hallelujah, you're saved from that perilous moment. Hey, Lisa Lockford. This is Danny Chavez here. Remember me? I'm the one you gave that fucking B to. Well, it's Daniel Chavez now, and I just want to tell you that's the best damn B I ever got. I'm down at LSU working with Michael and Ruth Bowman on my thesis. And guess what? I'm teaching now. I get it. So thank you. Thank you for that fucking B. Anais Nin writes, "We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are." There is this filament that weaves beside, between, behind, knitting its way from student to student, teacher to student, student to teacher, teacher to teacher. And this filament becomes firmament, as the warp and woof is the work of many weavers. The texture of wisdom rises in the weft, and you feel it here and there in the tilt of a head, the tone of voice, a touch of a hand, or a well-placed silence. Keep this. You're going to want to read it in a few years. And I did read it. initially saw that B plus. And I read it again a few years later, and again after that. I get it, Christie. Thank you. Thank you for that fucking B. It was the best damn B I ever got. I got that B, and I got so much more. Thank you.
I'm bringing this with me. Jim just passed it along, and it still has Christie's hair on it. So she's right here. When I got the update in India, I knew I had to write my letter to Christie. It was on my mind. There was not much time. I needed to write. In between study and research, on July 25th, I was called to write. And on the other side of the world, unbeknownst to me at the time, as I typed vigorously and without pause, Christie was taking her final breaths. I hope she heard the words as I typed them, or the sound of at least the keyboard clicking away. I hope she heard them when I spoke them out loud on the edge of the Ganges River, and I hope she hears them now. This is the letter, July 25th, 2017. To my dear friend and beautiful mentor, Christie, I wish I could be there to hold your hand, see your beautiful face, and hear you speak of all things divine. But I'm in India for the next month, deepening the spiritual path, discovering what it means to be in union with the body, mind, and spirit, and the monsoon season, and I'm learning that I still have so much to learn. The colors here are so bright, the scents extreme and pungent, and the smiles here broad and open. I do get stares and confused gazes most of the time, but I watch the ground for cow pies instead of meeting those cases. I move to the side of the road quickly when the trucks and scooters honk with such ferocity, and counter to my own desires, I let the stray dogs play in the street without asking for their attention. There are silverback monkeys here who will not take food from you unless you offer it, and then brownback monkeys will snatch whatever it is that you're carrying. The silverback monkeys are called yoga monkeys because they're patient and still. They know what they want will be presented to them in time. The rains here come quickly and without warning, a welcomed cleansing of the humid air, the stiffened muscles, a letting go of the past, a washing of past grief or anger. Is a chance to ask for forgiveness and a welcome chance to release what we no longer wish to carry to the wind and into the water. The deepened cloud cover offers the change to move inward and then to move forward, lighter now, calmer now, still. I'm a student again, forever a student, but here I'm learning what I've not yet known and have been aching to know. And today in philosophy class we learned about the 4 life stages in Vedic cultural tradition. And when they came to the Upanishad years, our later years and last stage of our life cycle, in this karmic wheel I thought of you. In this stage we sit with ourselves. We quest to know who we are, really, outside of all those external relationships and jobs and tasks that we take part. The Upanishad years are about asking questions about who you are and what it all means. Shiva once said to his lover, "My beloved, do not try and answer these questions, just make my questions disappear." While I can't answer your life meaning questions for you, perhaps I can make one question disappear by telling you how much you have meant to me over these years and how much you have influenced my heart, my mind, and spirit. And I'm quite sure, as we've seen in this room, the many hearts, minds, and spirits who have came before and after me. You are my mentor, someone I always looked up to, aspired to be. Yes, these are only 5 minutes of my life right now. She would ask you to shake it out before you began. And I kind of want to ask all of you to stand up and just like shake it out because we've been here sitting for so long. And I wanted to carry the performance studies torch for you at CSUN because you made this work possible, respected, understood sometimes, acknowledged in our university and across this great nation. You made the work stunning, provocative, theoretical, engaging, and beautiful. You will forever be the model I will follow in my work, in my life, and in my activism. Thank you will never be enough for what you've done for me, for your colleagues, and all of your students. You're also my dear friend. We also learned today that in my stage of life, the Samhita stage that lasts from 25 to 45, I won't tell you where I am in that range. But while in this stage, we learn about who we are through the relationships we cultivate. And while our time together the last years were not nearly what it should have been, I'm forever grateful for the time we did share. Your friendships run deep. Your impact is profound. Joanne Gilbert writes, I first met Christie as a grad student at NCA back in the early 1990s, introduced by Lynn Miller. It was immediately apparent to me why Lynn thought so highly of Christie. Her passion for and commitment to performance and social justice and the greater good was palpable. Christie was a mensch whose generated mind was rivaled only by her enormous heart. Her light was so bright, it continues to shine. Linda Park Fuller says, my friendship with Christie dates back 50 years. And I could sing praises about so many characteristics of this close and true friend, but I'm choosing her courage today. Christie was never more true to our friendship than when she dared to put it in jeopardy and for the sake of my health and sanity. This was a tough time in my career. I was putting everything into my work and self-medicating with alcohol to handle the stress. When I missed my flight home from a communication conference at which Christie and I were rooming together, she refused to look away from the problem and gently but firmly forced me to see what was happening to me. She didn't leave it at that. She wrote me a 14-page handwritten letter urging me to get sober. At first, I didn't want to believe her, but I thought deeply, and about 2 weeks later, I did become sober. And for 8 years, I did not drink any alcohol, and by the time I could return to social drinking, I had learned that while a glass of wine might be enjoyable occasionally, it doesn't alleviate stress or solve anything. And I have Christie to thank for that. Who knows? I may not even be here today if it weren't for Christie and her brave, tough love. I owe her so much. I love you, CL. Christie, our relationship taught me how to be exactly who I am in this world without apology and with self-awareness. And of course, you led by example. You are a warrior spirit, a powerful presence, and a beautiful heart. Your wise words and compassion made being in this world so much kinder. So thank you for sharing your time and wisdom with me. I'm forever changed. I'm forever grateful. And I will never ever forget. What we come to know in our Upanishad years is that everything we have is only borrowed. That the ultimate truth is that we just are. And all we have to do is just be. So thank you for being in this world. And your light has made it so much brighter. I love you. I'm with you. I think of you and send you deep love every day. And no matter what, you're always in this heart of mine.
Thank you all for amazing words and performances. I get the incredible opportunity now to tell you a little bit about the Christie Logan Endowment for Performance Ensemble. You know, really the endowment is about acknowledging the amazing, powerful, transformative work that you've just heard, you've spent the last hour hearing about. Goes beyond this room, the programs, the performances, the performers she's created, the scholars she's created, the teachers, and her role in making all of that happen. So I just want to thank Christie again. We've had a lot of thanks to her, but I really thank her for what she's done. You know, for our department, for performance studies, for the whole discipline, and for the creative world that we live in. We also have to be so grateful to Jim.
Yes.
This is an incredible gift, a huge gift that we're grateful to him for, you know, of course he's supporting Christie, he's supporting Performance Ensemble, he's supporting our department, and he's also extending her legacy of her devotion to performance studies and performance ensemble in perpetuity. This is a very generous gift. Thank you, Jim. The endowment will support student development of performance as a way of knowing and experiencing the world. We hope that it will enhance CSUN's visibility and reputation as a site of excellence in performance studies by fostering creativity, empathy, agency, and commitment to personal growth through student participation in ensemble performance. The Christie Logan Endowment for Performance Ensemble will support student travel to performance festivals and events, performance-based community outreach, as well as visiting artists and research that would be done by students and by faculty. So, when our students and our faculty travel to Pedagine in Arkansas, or to Patty Pace Performance Festival in Louisiana, or other national festivals, or even international festivals, Christie's legacy, her vision, her commitment, the labor, love, and passion she put into performance as a way of knowing, a way of being, and a way of experiencing the world will be extended and deepened over time and place. So we're really grateful also to all of you who have donated to the endowment. Your contributions will be put in a working fund so we can access and use them immediately to support the amazing and creative, transformative work of a performance ensemble. I want to acknowledge Janine Minjay, Pavi Prasad, Amanda McRaven, and our newest faculty member, Jay Kuehl, who will very directly be responsible for carrying on, continuing the legacy of Christie. So thank you all. We don't have to say this, but we can see that her legacy, her vision, her light, her being, her incredible ability to give a bee that leads you forward into the world in such amazing ways is actually being carried by so many. Some who are able to speak, some who are here, who are sitting and listening, but it's shared by so many and echoed around the country. So we just want to acknowledge that. And I would be remiss if I didn't do what my colleague Elizabeth Berry would remind me to do. So we actually have a donation basket in the reception room if you are interested in, and you also can, it's in your program on the back of it where you can make a donation to the Christie Logan Endowment for Performance Ensemble. So thank you all for all your generosity of spirit today. Our dear friend Mike, who is Christie's brother, is going to say a few words, and then we'll end up our performance piece.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm one of Christie's siblings, along with my brother Dan and my sister Katie, as well as my nieces Kelly and Jessica and Sydney, who can't be here right now, and nephews Randy and Sean, who are up north also too. But I think I speak for everyone that just amazed at the love that you all have Christie, and we appreciate it so much. I don't have much to say because, like I said, everything's been said and it's been all taken out of my mouth already. And I had a few things I was going to say, but you know, the only thing I'm going to say is ever since Christie passed away, there's been another poem that's been going through my head all the time. It's a very short poem. It was written by a father for his young son who passed away. And it goes, oh gosh, now I'm gonna. Where did you go last night on your magic carpet when you closed your eyes and left so quietly in sleep? I think I know. And that's given me a lot of comfort. But what's given me more comfort right now is all the love that I feel from everyone here and what an effect and affect she had on all of you. Thank you all. We have a cousin who is a wonderful opera singer, and Christie always loved listening to her. And she's not able to be here. She's suffering some health problems too, but she did send a CD of her singing Christie's favorite song, Ave Maria. And so, you know, it's funny, Jim and Christie went to a lot of concerts together, and I was able to go with them sometimes too. And every time I just remember Christie, how she just swept up with the music. And she would always stand like from back and forth, just swaying. It was great. So enjoy Maria's song, and if you want to sway, sway. Thank you again.